Yo, I'm sorting through some heinous haters like a pooper scooper. I'm just trying to take my life like a Koopa Trooper. I'm double Mario, that mean I'm super. And I'm freaking dangerous like a Chupa Chupa Cabre. Got them all day like a Kanye, but I'm way better getting cheddar in Monterey. But Jack, you don't know, man. You got the show, man. You want roast beef? Well, I'm Arby's.
What's up, my wizards? Dev, SBMTG down there, placed with the decks. Plural. This time, it's right to say that, because we've got something I like to do from time to time. This is a double deck tech. I'm going to give you one idea for a deck, a very budget way of building that idea, and then a really competitive way of building that idea. This is always fun. Today's subject matter is Devil Impact, we like to call it. This is an Impact Tremors deck that uses the new Devil token generating cards from Shadows of Innistrad. The best part is that the budget version is only going to cost you a whole $5 to build the main deck and the lands. The competitive version is only going to cost you about $180, which is pretty good for a competitive deck. So let's go ahead and start checking them out. Let's talk about the important stuff in the budget deck. First, the things that give the deck its name. 4 copies of Impact Tremors here. Card's been around forever. We all know what this does at this point. And I think this is the 3rd budget Impact Tremors deck on the channel. Card's always fun to build around. This format's no different. Even though we lost Hordeling Outburst, we got these cool devil things from Shadows of Innistrad, and we'll play 4 copies of Dance with Devils and 2 copies of the Devil's Playground here. I don't want to play all the copies of Devil's Playground because it costs 6 freaking mana, but it's still really good. Don't get me wrong, fine card, but I do like Dance with Devils a lot. Instant speed is very nice. You know, we can play it on their combat step and block a couple of guys. Sometimes, you know, double blocking a dude and killing up to a 4 toughness creature with this, but often we can spread the damage around, kill a creature or 2 even, and maybe end up dealing a point of damage or 2 to them. So really versatile card depending on what's going on in the game at that moment. Really good to play during their combat step. Love that it has instant speed. Last thing I'll say is that these devil tokens create a pretty stressful situation for the opponent no matter when you play them. You know, you can swing in with a couple, leave a couple back on defense, and then they have trouble, you know, if they block, then they're just gonna, you know, the tokens are gonna die and deal damage to something anyway. A lot of times they'll just let the tokens go through. And then other times, you know, you leave some up on defense and they don't want to block, they don't want to attack, because you're gonna block the tokens will die, and then all hell will break loose. Literally, I didn't even think about that as I said it. But yeah, it's really stressful combat situations for your opponent if you have a couple of devil tokens out. Well, we also have, besides the really important stuff, a bunch of stuff that also goes just really well with Impact Tremors in the format. Again, we lost Hordeling Outburst, still got a bunch of stuff that works. And I want to start with 4 copies of Dragon Fodder here. Dragon Fodder, still in the format, just perfect with Impact Tremors, you know, 2 mana, 2 damage, 2 guys, 2 blockers or 2 attackers, whatever we need at the time. Sometimes we do need blockers, you know, we're playing a 6 mana thing here at the top of the curve. Sometimes we want to get a little bit later into the game, so blocking is sometimes a priority. Other times we just want to smash in. We're going to play 4 Thopter Engineer in the deck. I really have liked this card for a while now. A 1/3 for 3 mana, not the best deal in the world, but when it comes to the 1/1 flyer, turns out that's awesome. You know, you're basically getting 2 power, one of which flies, split amongst 2 creatures. You get a great blocker and a decent attacker. So just really like this, and it obviously does 2 damage when you have an Impact Tremors out too. So we get a flying creature. It's always good to get as many of those as we possibly can. Again, both for defense and offense, you know. So big fan of Thopter Engineer, and I think it's a no-brainer. Here's a weird one and a reason to actually play blue in the deck. 4 copies of Eldrazi Sky Spawner. Like a couple of things about this. It gives us a 2 power flyer on the board for 3 mana, and it also gives us a 1/1. That obviously does 2 damage with an Impact Tremors. Well, that's great. And is good on curve. Same thing with Thopter Engineer. You know, 2nd turn Impact Tremors, 3rd turn, either one of these 3 drops is actually pretty good progression. And the token can actually help pretty, you know, a lot too. You know, we're trying to get to a 6 mana card at the top of the curve. So if we have 5 lands out and a Scion token, then we can go ahead and play a Devil's Playground. So Scion token means a lot more than you might think it does in this deck. But just really good with Impact Tremors. 2 flying power is always good, and mana ramp, so I think it's a definite inclusion. While we're putting blue creatures in, and this is a super budget deck, let's play 2 copies of Whirler Rogue here in the 4-drop slot. Just Whirler Rogue, obviously 3 damage with Impact Tremors. Just a really, really good 4-drop. And if you have a couple of bucks, this is the first upgrade that I'll recommend here. I would just play P and Quran. P&Q Crown's awesome, you know. This is P&Q Crown would be good in board stalls too. You can just deal 2 damage a turn basically with your Thopter tokens. Whirler Rogue is just an obviously very solid creature and is great with Impact Tremors. Let's play it, or if you have a couple of bucks, let's play P&Q Crown. To finish off the creatures, let's play 2 copies of Reckless Bushwhacker. Very easy in this deck to get the surge off on this. It just makes all your dudes pretty big all at once, you know. Really, really good at breaking stalls and such and just finishing the game out for you. So I wanted one way of pumping all of our dudes no matter what. And this can come down as a surprise in the late game and just really end things for you. So yes, definite 2 of at least. Here are some other things that we can play in the deck and that synergize well for a variety of reasons. I want to play 2 copies of Fiery Impulse in the deck. Fiery Impulse, just good removal. We're playing something like 20 overall spells in the deck. Spell Mastery, very, very easy to get. Only costs the 1 mana, so it helps with the Surge on Reckless Bushwhacker. I think it's worth it to play main deck copies of this for more reasons other than its removal. You know, I already outlined that it helps with the Surge. There's many, many reasons to do it. So at least the 2 copies of Fiery Impulse. I'd really like to play 3 if we could squeeze it in. There's also the usual suspects in any red deck, and that is Lightning Axe, Fiery Temper, and Tormenting Voice. Lightning Axe is a 2 of, Fiery Temper also a 2 of, and Tormenting Voice is a 3 of. Tormenting Voice and Lightning Axe I just really like, and if we're going to play them, we might as well play some amount of Fiery Temper here too. And this is what a lot of the decks are settling on. Sometimes you'll see 3 of Fiery Temper. Sometimes you'll see 4 of Tormenting Voice, which I'd like to do here. Tormenting Voice is pretty good because it helps get some gas for the mid-game, you know, and the late game even. Really decent card when you cast it late, and can, especially when you can discard that Fiery Temper to it. Feels very disgusting. Lightning Axe and Fiery Temper are similarly very good, even in the sort of early mid-game, turn 3, turn 4. Killing 2 guys for just 2 mana is often great, and can set us up to where we can start just doing our thing, you know, because a lot of our value isn't going to come till turn 4, you know. So really, really nice to help blow through the early game with some of this removal here. And Tormenting Voice just helps us set up for the late game by drawing the cards that we need to draw. So really like this whole complement of things. We see it in a lot of red decks and competitive standard, and these cards are definitely budget enough to play in the deck. And to finish off the spells, 1 copy of Geist Blast. Sounds weird, and some people are like, yes, and some people are like, no, and some people are like, what, and some people are like, but it actually does work. It's actually ended up as a 1-up in the competitive deck, too, because I've liked its performance so much in the deck. Geist Blast, 2 damage is 2 damage, you know, sometimes takes out a small creature, and sometimes provides a little bit of reach, you know, some burn at the end of the game if that's what you need. All those things are good. Those things are fine. But what we're looking for here is to copy a late game Dance with Devils or a late game Devil's Playground if we can pull off 9 mana. And sometimes the deck does go fairly late. We can block for days. So the deck can go fairly late and be able to pull that off sometimes. But even if we're just copying a Dragon Fodder, that's not bad. Impact Tremors is in play. Later on in the game, we copy a Dragon Fodder, and we're dealing 4 damage to them off the rip. And getting 4 guys, too. So that's pretty good. I've really been a fan of this card. Not so much that I want to make it a 2, 3, or 4 of or anything, but it is nice to know that it's in there, and occasionally it can do some real work for you and copy a Dance with Devils. Here's the lands in the budget deck here. We're playing 24 in all in this deck. And if you have Shivan Reefs or Wandering Fumaroles, definitely put those in. Do that all day. And if you wanted to make sort of a non-budget version of this deck, then you could obviously do the Shivan Reefs, the Wandering Fumaroles, Piankarons, and you would still be only on the hook for like 35 or something like that. It's still pretty cheap and makes the deck a lot more consistent, and Piankaron's an amazing threat. Here's the sideboard for the budget deck right here in front of me. More Fiery Impulse. That's always good to have as many of those on hand as you can. Rending Volley is amazing in this format right now for multiple reasons. Tears of Valakut, good against Archangel of Ties if you run up against that Blue-White Humans deck. And all the other flyers, you know, it's good against Ojutai when he swings in. There's a lot of stuff that I'd like to run to Tears of Valakut in this format. Invasive Surgery and Negate are both very important. They're in there against mass removal. If we're playing blue in the main deck, I might as well include some sort of way to get around Languish, which is a huge card in the format. Right now. So we just want to counter those things, and it also helps us counter Collected Company, Planeswalkers that we're otherwise extremely weak to, at least Negate does. And as far as Collected Company goes too. But Invasive Surgery is mostly in there against decks that play, you know, 4 of Languish main deck. So these are just incredibly important cards in the sideboard. Structural Distortion is in there. I talked about this a little while ago actually, and I've liked copying Structural Distortion in the competitive deck, but I still think it's well enough, a decent enough card in these colors to play in the budget deck. Good way to have a way of dealing with Ormondal before he transforms. You know, kill their Westvale Abbey with this. Exile it forever. That's nice. Also, exiles other goggles. You know, exiles goggles that other people are playing. And also deals 2 damage. So, just everything about the card I like. And obviously, you've probably already seen the Rise from the Tides in there. I want to put this in the sideboard against decks that it can probably be good against, decks that go long and maybe can't counter it. You know, there's only a few decks like that in the format, but we're playing 20 spells in this main deck. So sometimes Rise from the Tides can get pretty disgusting against the right deck. Here's the power rankings for the budget deck. A final score of 54, and we're going to improve dramatically once we get to the competitive deck here. But a final score of 54, which is not that bad considering the deck cost a whole $5 to build the main and the mana base on TCG Player right now. Obviously, it'll cost a little bit more if you want to put the Shivan Reefs, the Wandering Ephemerals, Peon Garons, whatever. Cost a little bit more, but really not that much more. You know, you're out of there for way under 50 bucks. And the deck improves its numbers, its consistency numbers, its power numbers, its resiliency numbers significantly if you do that. So do actually really like even just playing the budget deck. Against the right deck, decks that want to go a little bit longer into the game, even against, aggro decks, if we can just spread out creatures, we can block forever. Get into the late game when they lose their gas and hit a bigger spell, Dance with Devils is especially good in the late game against aggro. So we have a decent game against some things in the format here, and I've really enjoyed playing the deck. But I want to go ahead and show you the fully powered version of the deck. As far as the competitive deck goes, the basic setup and the important stuff, still exactly the same. We're going to play 4 copies of Impact Tremors, 4 copies of Dance with Devils, and 2 copies of Devil's Playground. Really, the setup is still the same, and I don't have to talk too much about it. The cards still do what they do when they do it, and why. So the whole reason we're building the deck is to play, these cards in combination. So not going to change anything there. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And we're still going to play 4 copies of Dragon Fodder as well, because they work so well with Impact Tremors. But from there on out, things change dramatically. The first thing we're going to do is tweak the creatures a little bit. We're going to play 4 copies of Hangerback Walker and 3 copies of Peon Garons in the deck. I would actually still really like to work Eldrazi Skyspawner into the deck. I just can't really find any room for it. Really like that card in testing. But these cards are obviously very, very powerful, and especially powerful in tandem. When you do pop a Hangerback Walker, obviously you've got a bunch of fodder for Peon Garons to just sit back and slingshot 2 damage at a time at their face, if that's how you want to win the game at that point, or pick off small creatures so you can get through with your dudes, or even in some cases pick off larger creatures, if you've got 6 mana. I'm going to play 2 copies of Chandra Flamecaller in the deck, and I know it's expensive, and I know it's another 6 mana card too, but just makes the deck, this card is delicious with everything we're trying to do. Just talked about Hangerback Walker. We can obviously kill our own Hangerback Walkers and get a bunch of tokens. If we have an Impact Tremors, that can deal a bunch of damage right there for us. And these are obviously good with the Devil tokens too. If we play a Devil's Playground one turn, then we can obviously play a Chandra the next turn, or if we have a Chandra on board, we can do it that turn, wipe our Devils, and end up dealing damage to them that way too. So with an Impact Tremors in play, and if we play a Devil's Playground, we can deal 4 damage off the Impact Tremors, and then 4 damage when we wipe them with the Chandra. That's 8 damage in all, and can very often just finish off the game for you all at one time. Chandra herself is also just really good with Impact Tremors, because every time you make 2 tokens, you deal 2 damage, and you're probably getting in for at least 3 to the face, if not 6. With her +1 there. But even if you get him for no damage with the creatures, you're still going to deal at least 2 damage when you put the 2 tokens on the battlefield. Not only that, but we can draw a bunch of cards if that's what we want to do. Just everything about Chandra is awesome. We're putting her in there mostly for her ability to wipe creatures that we want to wipe, and also the opponent's creatures, which can be very important. But also because her +1 is great. Just everything about Chandra is an absolute yes, so play her. And the weirdest addition to the deck, almost certainly, is 3 copies of Pyromancer's Goggles. I know this deck looks super janky. Just fantastic with everything that we're playing in the spell base. Not only all the things it's traditionally good with, we're playing Magmatic Insight, Tormenting Voice, all of that, yes. But also, if you can hit a Devil's Playground and copy it with the Pyromancer's Goggles, you, sir, are in the money. You're dealing, with an Impact Tremors out, you're dealing 8 damage to them. If you have a Chandra out, you can deal another 8 damage to them. That's 16 damage. It's crazy. And it does happen. It absolutely does. Pyromancer's Goggles is great. And by the way, ramps you into Devil's Playground and Chandra. If you can afford on turn 5 to tap out for a Pyromancer's Goggles, then when you untap on turn 6, you've definitely got the mana for Devil's Playground or Chandra. So Pyromancer's Goggles can actually be really good in just helping us ramp to these higher cards. And copying a dance or a playground is just absolutely gross, and it's happened multiple times when I'm testing the deck out, and is just a blowout play. I mean, it almost makes, the Pyromancer's Goggles almost makes Devil's Playground completely and totally playable just by itself. I mean, getting 8 dudes, and if you have an Impact Tremors dealing 8 damage, and if those creatures die, it's just, things get crazy quick. So this, yes, Pyromancer's Goggles, yes. Into the other things, here we're playing one copy of Magmatic Insight in the deck, just really, really good with Pyromancer's Goggles, but I don't want to discard all my lands or anything, but this is really good with Pyromancer's Goggles. And it's good to help you get set up in the early game if you get a bad draw and you've got some lands in your hand that you don't necessarily want, but we want all of our lands in this deck. But I at least want to sneak in one copy of Magmatic Insight because it's so good with Goggles and it's so good later on in the game. Tormenting Voice, there's a 2 of Tormenting Voice in the deck right here. I'd like to play a 3 of Tormenting Voice. Obviously great with Pyromancer's Goggles, just for the same reason Insight is. You only have to, discard 1 card, you end up drawing 4 cards with this freaking thing. Same thing with Insight. Discard 1 land, draw 4 cards. So Tormenting Voice definitely has a place in the deck. It can help us draw all the cards we need to get to key pieces when we need to. We're playing a 2 of Fiery Impulse in the deck. Again, that removal is important, especially in the early game. Playing 19 spells in this deck, so very, very easy to get off the spell mastery. Not hard at all. Pretty good with the Goggles, and it's cool. These 1 mana cards, I mentioned this in the Pro Tour top 8 video, but I want to mention it again. It's pretty important. With these 1 mana red spells, what you can do is tap out on turn 5 for a Goggles and go ahead and get immediate value out of it by copying a Fiery Impulse or a Magmatic Insight. That can be really good to help you get all the value out of your turn 5 that you possibly can. So want to play at least a few of these 1 mana spells. We're playing a 2 of Fiery Temper in the competitive deck as well. And we don't have Lightning Axe in the main deck. It is in the board. So we don't have as many ways to madness this out. Although we do have Chandra. Chandra's in this deck. It's not in the budget deck. So that's one way. But we don't have as many, I guess, consistent ways of madnessing this. But I still like the card, and I'm still going to play it. Instant speed, 3 damage to any target is always great. So a little bit of reach in the late game, if that's what we need to do. A little, creature destruction, creature removal. Let's do that. Totally playable. 1 copy of the aforementioned Geist Blast in the deck. Just, again, really, really, really like copying a lot of these spells, in this deck, we have a little bit more mana. We have more lands. We have Pyromancer's Goggles, too. So very easy to get all the mana needed to play a huge spell and copy it if a Geist Blast is in our graveyard. So I already brought up all the reasons I like the card, and they stand. I just try it out. Try it out. Tell me what you think. And to finish off the main deck here, 1 copy of Fall of the Titans. Because all the Goggles decks are doing it, we might as well too. The card is actually fantastic and also works well with the 1 and 2 mana spells that we're playing. We've got a lot of lands in the deck, like I just said, and we're ramping the Pyromancer's Goggles. So this can be huge. Later on in the game, it can just finish the game. We just 1 card that can just finish the game when we draw it. That's always pretty nice. In the right situation, this definitely says you win the game. If you copy this with a Pyromancer's Goggles, and a lot of people know this, some people don't, so I have to repeat it. If you copy this with a Pyromancer's Goggles, then the X on the copy will equal whatever X was on the original casting of the card. If X equals 5 on the original casting, 5 will also equal X on the copy, So this can end up doing a ton of damage in the late game and just close out the game for you immediately. So Fall of the Titans, super definitely playable. We're playing 25 lands in the competitive build because we've got another 6-drop in the deck. We got 5-drop Goggles and stuff. So 1 more land I think is important. And we get to play really good ones like Westvale Abbey, which is another card that if you have a couple extra bucks and you want to play the budget build, put Westvale Abbey in there because the card works so amazingly well and you can easily get to the 5 creatures. And Ormondal is just another win con. If you notice, the deck has a ton of win conditions. Fall of the Titans, P and Karan with Hangerback Walker, just damage off of tokens, damage off of impact Tremors, and even more. There's a ton, Pyromancer's Goggles, copying a Devil's Playground, that's one. Chandra is a win condition in and of herself. So just so much. There's a bunch of win conditions, and Westvale Abbey just adds on to those. So there's a million ways we can finish the game out. That's all I'm saying. There's a lot of power in the deck. And here's our sideboard, which is sort of a tweaked version of the first sideboard here. We're doing a lot of the same things. Negate and Invasive Surgery, still important cards. Pretty much everything is still the same except for Goblin Dark Dwellers. And that's pretty much it. We're playing Goblin Dark Dwellers in the board here because we can afford to. But I don't know that it has a place in the main because I can't really find the room for it. It's a very synergistic card. If you wanted to find room in the main, it's totally worth it. And here are your power rankings for the competitive deck. A final score of 66. Much, much better. And it's pretty darn powerful. 66 doesn't look incredibly powerful. But the deck goes extremely wide. I've already mentioned it has a ton of different ways to win. But it is still weak to the stuff that tokens decks are weak to. 1 languish and you can really, really be on the ropes. 1 or 2 big guys, especially flyers, and you're in trouble. So there are issues with every tokens deck, don't get me wrong. But hell, a tokens deck just won the Pro Tour. I just feel like this deck is more competitive than it might look at first glance. Doing a lot of stuff that looks janky, but when you do copy that Devil's Playground with the Pyromancer's Goggles, It's super ridiculous, even if you don't have an impact Tremors. If you do, you probably just ended the game. And the competitive deck doesn't even cost that much. It costs about $180 to $200 to build on TCG Player right now, which is still like one of the lower competitive decks that I've done in a really long time. $200, not that much to ask to be competitive in a format when just a few months ago we were spending $1,000 to try to be competitive in a format. So $200, not bad. That's all I've got for now, and I'm probably running really short on time, so I'm going to tell you really quick what I'm planning on doing next time. I already talked about doing a red-white mid-range deck, working on that still, and it may come next, but I also want to do a mill deck. Wedge has already got you covered with the blue-red mill deck. His version is pretty good, but I'd also like to try my hand at milling, and I want to do a Jund mid-range deck. I want to do it right. You know, I tried to focus on the frog last time, and I think the frog will probably still be in my next Jund build, but same time, I just think we could build a Jund good stuff deck right now that can be ridiculous. So I really want to try doing that too. Let me know what you want to see next. If you enjoyed the content, and I sincerely hope you did, and Ziggy came up here at the last minute, hey, good to see you. It was almost 2 whole videos in a row without you, buddy. Everyone misses you, including me. But if you enjoyed the content, like it. That makes sense. Share it if you think it needs to be shared. Comment and let me know how you felt. And then sub if you're new or if you just haven't done it. Just do the things. And we'll see you next time. I'm Dev. This is Ziggy from SBMTG. And we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching, my wizards.